Welcome back to A Celtic State of Mind. It's Thursday. I'm Paul John Dykes and I'm joined by John Paul Mason. And I'm delighted, JP, that it's Thursday because I always enjoy our wee walk through the world of Celtic and anything else that comes to mind as we are doing so. You've also inspired me because every Thursday you're on, you've got a different jersey up behind you. And I've decided because we are doing the Sell the Jerseys initiative, I'm going to put one of the jerseys up behind me as well. It's always good for a bit of discussion. You were just telling me before we came live, there's a bit of scratching on my earpieces. So if that happens, JP's going to give me a shout. I'll disappear for a minute and get a new set. I hate the technology letting us down. JP, how's your week been?
Good. I was at the Scotland game on Tuesday night, so it was a different experience. It's kind of weird when you're used to going to Celtic games and then all of a sudden you're watching like an international game of that level. I mean, Scotland's team is a very, very good team. The England team is frightening when you see the level of quality that they have up close. Also frightening was Gareth Southgate's shoe wear. He had slip-on shiny brown shoes with red socks. Couldn't have been more like Tory boy if he tried.
I never saw his choice of footwear, JP, and I'm pretty glad I didn't.
I just happened to be. I was sitting in the south stand, so just sitting we were right next to sort of like the England bench, well, the squad, so you could see all them up close as well, and they love themselves. Like those guys, like your James Madisons and all of that. They fancy their bara, as my dad would say.
It's a different world, JP, isn't it? It really is. It's a different world. There is a celebrity status, but the ego must be absolutely massive. You were talking about Tory boy shoes. I don't own a pair of Tory boy shoes because my political beliefs wouldn't allow me to own a pair of Tory boy shoes, JP. But just as I came off yesterday, Kev Graham stepped in yesterday for a wee switcheroo when it came to the contributors. There was a message, I think it was from Stevie Boy, about political leanings. Now, Steve, I'm not sure if it was for myself or for Kevin. I'm always happy to talk about politics and my political leanings in relation to the jersey I had up behind me because it was the Tartan effort and we wore it the night of the referendum, just so that there's no doubt. I do believe in an independent Scotland, a reunified Ireland. That's my political belief. And I think we should abolish the monarchy. There's the three biggies. So, you know, if you think that I'm some way inclined to wear Gareth Southgate's shoes, I don't know where you're getting that from, Stevie boy.
It was 9 years ago today that they had a gig at the Usher Hall. It was called A Night for Independence, and what a night that was! One of the best atmospheres I've ever experienced at a gig. It's like Franz Ferdinand, Mogwai, Frightened Rabbit. On the bill escaped me from my mind right now, but it was just. I was kind of like in the middle to the front of the standing area and looked behind me, and it was just folk going absolutely tonto. I mean, if you could have bottled that energy in the room that night, you'd have had something very powerful. But it wasn't to be that time. But I don't believe that it's far away.
In my lifetime, I hope that's the three things politically. And people might say, "Oh well, your views on the monarchy isn't a political view." Of course, it is. So anyway, yeah, just in case you're confused with that one, Stevie boy, that's where I'm standing, and you'll need to ask Kev Graham the next time he's on what his political views are. You might be saying, this is a Celtic podcast, not a political podcast. Listen, football goes hand in hand with politics. Come on. We love a bit of politics. You were talking about atmosphere. This jersey behind me, JP, just before we came on, I said to you, what game or player? I mean, what does this remind you of? And I'm going to throw mine in. It reminds me of two games against Kilmarnock, Rugby Park. The first game was the match where we went into the halftime break 3-0 down. Neil Lennon has since admitted that if he didn't pull something back out of that game, he was gone. We drew 3 each. I mean, it was a great comeback in the second half. And then the second fixture at Rugby Park in the league couldn't have been much different than that. It was a 6-0 thrashing. And the player that I do remember from both games is Charlie Mulgrew. He scored in both games, Big Chaz. Wearing this jersey. Of course. Can I say that? Wearing this jersey, which at the time I was not a fan of. But now I'm looking at it, particularly without the sponsor, and it's grown on me all these years later, JP. I'm a bit of a fan of this now.
I don't know what it fetches on eBay or anything like that. I don't know if it's considered a cult top just yet, but I've got it long sleeved. Again, no sponsor, and I got it in the sale the following season. It was on like a sale rack in the Celtic shop, which was, if I ever was kind of doubting a top, and I think I did kind of doubt the top during that season. It was only when I saw it in the sale rack the following season I was like, do you know what? I think I will, like yourself, grow to like it, and I'm glad I've got it anyway. And like you say, with the green and white badge stitched on instead of the colourway like this matching the strip, I think it's a pretty cool top. Yeah, it reminds me of Gary Hooper, Chris Commons. That's the two players I can see wearing it. With it, Gary Hooper with like the black Under Armour on, like a polo neck type thing.
He did wear that. I mean, you've mentioned a couple of guys who played in the Celtic Masters on some kind of blue carpet the other week there. JP, to be fair, I thought Celtic had a pretty strong side. But, you know, some names when they leave Celtic, the relationship that they've got with Celtic fans diminish quite quickly, don't they? And that seems to have happened with Commons. Do you think there's any way back for him? Because it was interesting as a player. I always felt that he was a guy who had no affiliation, no connection to Celtic. He's a Derby County fan, isn't he? And it comes to Celtic, and him and his wife absolutely embraced the ethos of the club, got involved in a lot of initiatives, charitable initiatives, and it's just pretty sad the way it's kind of gone with Commons, because what a player he was during his time here.
He was. I used to have many a running argument with Craig, who sits behind me or sat behind me, and he did not like enjoy Commons at all as a football player. His line was, "All he does is score," and I was just like, "Well, yeah, kind of happy that we've got a guy in our team that scores all the time, because he did score a lot of goals."
It's not a bad habit to have, is it?
I know, but I mean, I think he was just obviously questioning his work rate and all the rest of it. But I think there wasn't a way back for Commons for a lot of Celtic fans, it would seem, after his spat with Ronnie Dyler and John Collins. And who was that away to? It was away.
Mould. It was Mould.
Yeah.
Do you call them Mould, or do you just add a wee moulder just so they didn't seem a bit mouldy?
I would say Mould.
That was poor. Remember, he apologised following that. There was a public apology. One of only, I'm double checking my stats, one of only 5 players, I believe, in the last 20 years who have scored 32 or more goals in a season for Celtic. Chris Commons. What's your thoughts on Commons? What's your thoughts on that jersey? What's your memories? What players come to mind? What games come to mind? Has it aged well, as JP mentioned, or not? And of course, JP, you've got a Scotland one over your shoulder. You were at the game this week against England. What was your experience?
Yeah, it was really. It was a really nice night for a game of football. It feels like it may be the last nice night that we get. I mean, it was absolutely brutal last night in Glasgow, with rain pouring down. And it was like someone had just flicked a switch and went, right, that is definitely summer over. Here's the real Scottish weather, and that was it. So, but it was a nice night on Tuesday for a game of football, and like I said, it's quite frightening to see a team of their quality up close. I mean, they didn't even play that well, but they took us apart at times. And when Scotland got the goal back, there was definitely belief in the stadium, and you looked over at the England support and they were static and silent, and maybe feared that there was a potential of a comeback. But the third goal killed it. But the Harry Maguire stuff was, I mean, a guy that was £80 million and was getting ridiculed by the Scotland support for every time he touched the ball. It was just kind of people doing the, whoa, is he going to let? He obviously scored their own goal, which put the tin hat in it for him. But I mean, it's just so wild to see. I mean, I know Gareth Southgate came out afterwards and said that he didn't have a problem with the Scotland fans doing that. He was just like, they're just having a bit of fun. But it's like the environment that's been created for Harry Maguire in England has given way to opposition support doing things like that. I mean, his career, I don't know where he's going to go from here, but I think he maybe needs to go abroad or something like that and just get his confidence back, re-establish himself, because I mean, it's so surreal to think of a guy that cost that amount of money and is probably earning that much money a week, but he was an absolute panto. I was going to say villain. He wasn't really a villain.
He was a joker. He's a panto joker.
He was the joker. Yeah,
See, the thing, JP, it's horrible to get abuse, right? It is. It's horrible. Online, in person, it doesn't really happen in person, does it? But you imagine a footballer. You were talking there about, the ego and the kind of superstar status of footballers. That kind of stuff must still get to them, though, eh?
Oh, 100%. I mean, the thick end of 48,000 people all going for it.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't feel like I could join in just because of where we were sat. We were sat like right next to his teammates. It would have felt a bit weird. Kind of felt like we were in the kind of neutral zone because there was some folk with England colours on, and there was definitely like 3 English guys next to me who did their best to stay in their seat when England scored. So yeah, I think it no doubt will have affected him, and you just don't know where he goes from here. I mean, at Manchester United, you just don't know where that. I mean, he could have moved in the summer apparently, but we couldn't agree money. So it's a long road back for him, I think.
It definitely is, and we're at a point now where the international break is over. We're on the Thursday before our first domestic game back against Dundee, and then we're looking ahead to Feyenoord in the Champions League. I was on a Feyenoord podcast yesterday. It's going to air today, and the first thing they said is everybody's calling it Feyenoord. It's Feyenoord. I said, no problem. I think we call it Feyenoord anyway. And they were talking to us, JP, about how Celtic fans are viewing the game in relation to the kind of rivalry side of it. Mm-hmm. And I said, and listen, I'm just talking for me. I don't know how others feel. Please let us know in your comments if you agree or disagree with this. And I said, when we're looking at that group, there's a few elements to this. Firstly, the other 2 teams are absolutely, no doubt about it, not loved by Celtic or Celtic fans for various reasons. Lazio, you'll remember. I mean, we just, again, going back to politics, we opened the show with politics. Why don't we like Lazio? Politics. They do not, you couldn't get further away from our state of political thinking, right? And I think that became clear following some of the banners that we flew against them the last time round, 2019, where we beat them home and away. And Mussolini's granddaughter didn't take too kindly to one of them in particular. And that's fine because you're annoying the right people there. Then you've got Atletico Madrid. Atletico Madrid, you go back to 74, European Cup semi-final, JP, the last time we got to that stage of the tournament. And every opportunity I get, I throw this one out there. Between 64 and 76, in the 12 campaigns between that period, Celtic got to at least the quarter-final of a European tournament on 9 occasions. That's astonishing. Some people just think, flash in the pan, you won in Lisbon. No. Celtic were teetering on being a European superpower at that stage. And that kind of ended, I think, in earnest in 74 with the semi-final against Atletico Madrid. For anyone who doesn't know, I can't remember it before my time, but it was nothing each at Celtic Park. They had 3 sent off, 7 booked. There was a fight in the tunnel on the way up after the game, and every Celtic player I've spoken to who was in that tunnel say whatever happened in that tunnel stays in the tunnel. Apparently, Strathclyde police got involved and they were on Celtic's side, clobbering the Atletico Madrid players. Over in Spain, Jock Stein and Jimmy Johnson received death threats before the game. Celtic went out and got beat 2-0. So we've got no real love for Atletico Madrid. And then, of course, the game in the mid-80s, 1985, we played against them behind closed doors, JP, due to the Rapid Vienna fiasco the season before. So there's no really great memories. So what I was saying to the Feyenoord guys is, listen, you might have beat us in the European Cup final, but there's no real hate from Celtic fans. And I had spoken to Ellen Mannins, who was on the podcast yesterday. As I say, it will be out there some point today. And she filled me in relation to the kind of state of mind of Feyenoord fans and the fact that they are definitely the anti-establishment club. And their rival is Ajax and our rival is Rangers. So there's an alignment there in the way that the fans are the kind of working class fans, if you like, over there. So I said to them, I said, we want revenge for you beating us in the European Cup final. Of course we do. But there's definitely no hate. There's more of a friendship there. Would you agree with that?
Well, I mean, I've not got apart from the fact that I bought a Feyenoord strip when I was a wee guy because of Henrik Larsson. I don't really have any massive love of Feyenoord other than when they beat Rangers and Van Hooijdonk scored the free kicks.
And he took his top off and all that, remember, eh?
I mean, that's a fond memory for obvious reasons. But I think it's just because they're not Ajax, and I definitely don't have any love for Ajax. I kind of wish I did, because I mean, Ajax, with the fans aside, it's quite a cool club, and I really like that jersey. They released the Bob Marley jersey. That was cool. If it was any other club, I would have probably bought that. But no, Feyenoord is not some team that I've ever taken aim at. That might change after Tuesday. I don't know, but it's interesting. That was anything discussed about the fan patter between Feyenoord and Ajax and how they don't allow any fans from, and it's been like that for a few years. Did you know that they don't allow that when Feyenoord go away to Ajax, there's no Feyenoord fans and vice versa?
I did not know that. I might have discussed it had I known that, JP, just to talk about the impact of it, the impact of the fixture.
Well, I mean, it's due to something, from my knowledge anyway, a lot more serious than just getting fed up of seeing the other team win or concocting some reason to get more money from your own fans. But they used to arrange fights in like a bit of ground. Like, I know this happens quite a lot in Germany and stuff like that. Like football fans meet up in like the Black Forest with masks on and leather hell out of each other just for a laugh. Like
kind of Fight Club style.
Aye, like that people might be listening to this and be like, "What are you talking about? There's no way that happens." It does happen. They film it and put it on YouTube. So you look up German football fans fighting in a forest on YouTube, you will see footage of them meeting up to fight, and it's supposed to be a case of like no weapons, just fists, and
just a good old fist fight.
Just like a proper, like you used to hear of the old. I grew up in Bathgate, so you'd hear like tales of like the Bathgate headhunters and the bushwhackers. There were supposed to be like these gangs that would meet up and fight up in like B Craigs and stuff like that. It sounded completely surreal, but maybe that happened, maybe it didn't. But unfortunately, when they did have one of these arranged fights between Feyenoord and Ajax, somebody took it too far and did bring weapons, and somebody did die. And then from that moment, this is based on an article I read, by the way. From that moment, they basically went, right, no away fans at either ground. I don't know if it's been changed since then, but that's certainly what I remember reading. So it's interesting that there is a derby that exists where fans aren't allowed, but for definitely different reasons.
Absolutely, and I have invited them back on Acsom, which would be the right thing to do for the home leg at Celtic Park. Of course, they're going to come over for the game, and I'll definitely ask them about that. But we didn't have as funky names as the Headhunters or the Bushwhackers where I come from in Fife. It was basically the YVB, which was the Young Valley Boys, and the YOB, which is the Young Oakley Boys. If you went into Dunfermline, it was the Abbey Toy, which was an Abbey View something. But that was the gangs in Fife. Whether or not you're a member of that kind of fraternity, let us know in the comments section. Jungle Lion, get Haxa to replace Abada. We're going to have to talk about Abada. Yet another name on the injury list. Haksabanovic, farewell. He's away to Stoke. I spoke about that during the week as well. Jamie Young, we have gutted for Abada. Let's see what Lewis Palmer and Tellio to shine. Yeah, I think it does open up an opportunity for somebody else, very much like the tagline. If Nat Phillips starts, I guess the first question is, should he start? Which of the Ibrox pairing drops out? Well, you look at both of them, and I don't think Gustav Lagerbielke or Liam Scales were first choices, JP. It comes down to there's an injury or a pair of injuries, go and make the jersey your own. And I think that Abada's dropping out. The big question that we'll be asking today is, who should replace him? Has Yang done enough to step in? Probably. Will Rocco Vata get an opportunity? He's doing really well wherever he gets an opportunity at international level. And of course, I think he's done well in the first team as well. So we'll be talking about all of that. Double denim. I'm not sure I drop either Scales or Lagerbielke at this point. For me, it's their jersey to lose, but I would have Phillips on the bench and would introduce him if needed. What's your take on it, JP? Yesterday, Kevin Graham said something about Scales' performance that I didn't disagree with. It might be deemed a wee bit kind of like negative, dare I say, or pessimistic maybe would be a better word, in that the performance of Scales at Ibrox might be looked back on as a one-off. And Phillips, long-term, on the back of that comment, therefore would be more of a first choice than Scales. I don't want to write him off. I think, the trajectory or the arc of Liam Scales' Celtic career has been really impressive. But I go back to the St Johnstone game the week before, JP, where the two mistakes that led to Joe Hart's 2 saves came from Liam Scales being basically rinsed by a 19 and a 20-year-old St Johnstone player. So I get what Kev says. What's your take on it? Do you change up the centre-half partnership?
It's a tough one because obviously you've got to be thinking about your next move, which is Tuesday night. And do you introduce Phillips with Lagerbielke as a test to see how they get on together, or do you keep the same pairing? I get what Double Denham's saying there about you don't, obviously, to be fair to the two players that played at Ibrox, you'd want to give them the next game, because ultimately they kept a clean sheet and they were part of a winning side at our most toughest venue that we'll go to arguably this season. So it would be a bit harsh if they were, if one of them was jettisoned. But you know that Cameron Carter-Vickers, when he comes back, is going to grab one of those jerseys. So it's really up to the others to fight over who's going to get the second one. I don't know much about Nat Phillips. I would suggest maybe I would start with Scales and Lagerbielke and then maybe introduce Phillips for the last half an hour or something like that to see who. If you're intending to play Phillips with Lagerbielke, then you take off Scales and play Phillips for like the last half an hour. But I think maybe it would be an idea just to start them. It's an interesting. I don't know how long's Abada rumoured to be out for. I mean,
right. Well, I heard something this morning. It was pretty worrying, but until the gaffer confirms it, JP, I wouldn't like to believe that it's going to be 5 months, but that's what was reported this morning.
Wow.
Which is horrific. But as I say, in terms of a source, I would much rather wait. Apparently, it was an Israeli source. I don't know if anything's been lost in translation. I'd be hoping it's 5 weeks at the very worst, no 5 months. But I'm pretty sure Brendan Rodgers will be asked that question at tomorrow's press conference, and we can maybe take it from there. But we'll be talking about that situation on the wing. We'll be talking about the centre-half position. What is your thoughts on it? I'm pretty sure we're going to get a few different takes on it. Jungle Line, harsh on Scales to be dropped. I think after that performance at Ibrox, it would feel harsh on Scales. 100% it would. But I think there is a dilemma in that Brendan Rodgers is looking ahead to Feyenoord. He's looking at Rotterdam. That's going to be a hugely difficult game. I mean, that's going to be massive. People are going on about, that's the best team we could have got out of pot one. I get it all. But Feyenoord are a top-class side, and it's in Feyenoord. It's in Rotterdam. Are you confident, I guess, picture the scene. We go out on Tuesday night and Scales is starting. Are you confident with that? And I think back to St Johnstone. Yeah, you've got Ibrox, but the other side of the coin is St Johnstone. He was shown up quite a few, at least twice, against a really poor side in St Johnstone at home, where you're meant to be at your strongest. So that worries me a bit. Phillips came in. I think if he was a wee bit sharper, dare I say, he would have started at Ibrox. Listen, you can say that. I know that it worked out for the best, but I think he would have started.
On the flip side of that, though, you've got to add in the fact that there would have been an element of nerves in that game against St Johnstone for Scales, because was that not his first start in a long time? Am I wrong in thinking that? I don't think
that was his first start, yeah, because Nawrocki played against Kelly, didn't he? It was after the game that he was injured.
So I think a little bit of slack needs to be given to him on that front. Who knows what the win and that performance at Ibrox has done for his confidence? A 90 minutes like that in that environment could add 20-30% to his game. And I mean, no disrespect, but he probably needs that added to his game, because he's not been good enough to be a starter for Celtic in the 2 years that he's been here. He's gone away and done pretty well at Aberdeen by all accounts. Didn't see him every week there, but I've got a good friend who's an Aberdeen fan who does watch them all the time, and did say that Liam Scales was really good for Aberdeen, particularly in the second half of last season. So, and then people will be like, "Oh well, it's all very well doing well for Aberdeen, but I mean, it's the same league." You know, I mean, the majority of our games are going to be in this league. So if he can do the business for one team in this league, then you'd think he can do the business for us. It is about that step up, and the step up to the Champions League is massive. So there obviously there would be concerns for him, and you wouldn't want him to be absolutely embarrassed or anything like that by the quality that they'll have up front, because it's not really fair to then judge him on that, because nobody expected when we brought Liam Scales in really that he would be starting in the Champions League for us. I don't think anybody could have thought when we were signing a guy from the League of Ireland that he would, you know, that's absolute fairy tale stuff for him. So I guess we'll just have to wait and see. It's weird having all these question marks, but it's always the same. It's always the same, isn't it? We never ever have a settled side going into these games. If it's if it's not the qualifiers, it's the actual Champions League itself. Last season, you go back, we didn't have Starfelt, we didn't have Carter Vickers for periods of, well, for all of the Champions League pretty much. When you're having to throw in a guy like Stephen Welsh or Moritz Jens, it was the same thing.
You know, I've said this a few times. When we have a great side, you know, there's a sweet spot where you know that it's your strongest 11, JP. They're all firing. That sweet spot never happens when we're playing these European games. There's always a question mark. There's always a position. There's always a loss of form. Someone's out injured. We're bringing in signings too late. There's always something going into these games that is a concern. You never go in flying like you're the best version of Celtic under Brendan Rodgers, the best version under Ange. And again, second time around with Brendan Rodgers. So, yeah, that is a concern. I'll be very interested to hear James French's views tomorrow. James stood up for Liam Scales a couple of weeks back when he was on the show, and he will be appearing tomorrow. I'll ask him the exact same question as well. Now, at Celtic Follower on the YouTube, it may be a blow losing Abada because of his goal contribution, but we definitely aren't short of wingers. Forrest, Johnson, Palmer, Yang, Tillio all need to step up and grab their chance. I'm going to throw Rocco Vata into that mix as well. I'm not suggesting for a moment that he is second choice at Celtic, but if somebody else steps up, it brings Vata up a wee notch, and maybe he'll get some game time. Kevin Mullen, afternoon Acsom, buzzing for Champions League, but we need a big players fit, and with Abada's injury, just another blow. Let's hope Palmer hits the ground running. Yang, for me, so far, JP, has always looked pretty impressive when he's came in. There was the one game, I think, against Killie where he kept slitting, probably down to the surface. But other than that, I think he's got real intent about him. When he gets the ball, he wants to make something happen. He's not scared to take on a player. How many players do we have that does that now? Because, I mean, Abada's not a guy that weaves past players. He uses his speed, his awareness, his anticipation to get into pockets of space. Maeda's all about the running, the work rate, the stamina. It's not about taking on players. We miss that now that Jota's out the building. The one guy so far that I think brings that to the table is Yang. So if Abada is indeed out, is Yang the guy that you call upon? Do you bring him in?
Surely, yeah. I'd like to see more of him. I've not seen nearly enough of him in the... I mean, God, I've not been at a Celtic game since Kilmarnock away, which feels like absolutely ages ago. When you've missed Celtic for the whole summer and whatnot, and since the Scottish Cup final, and then you get a bit back, and then... I mean, I can't even remember when the Kilmarnock game was, but it was about 3-4 weeks ago now. I mean, it's a long time in football when games have been happening, but you're just being kind of forced to watch on the TV, or not at all in the case of the St Johnstone game. But I think Yang obviously recently given a full cap for his country, so he'll have that as a confidence boost as well. He seems to have the faith of the manager. The manager obviously thinks that he can trust him in games because he started him already in games. So I would suggest that he'll likely start, yeah.
Mm. There's loads of comments coming in. This is what it's all about. So we're going to have to bring it up because obviously there's been a Champions League squad announced as well. JP will be talking about what that means for the futures of some of the players. There were probably a couple that you were surprised at, maybe a couple you were surprised are in. Ewan Boy Martin joins the chat. It's a no-brainer. Nat Phillips and Lagerbielke will start on Saturday and be our pairing for the first few Champions League.
Give him the job. Give him the job.
Once CCV is back, he will play with Phillips. To be fair, I think there's a ruthlessness about some gaffers, JP, who, you know, that bit that sways you towards Scales, right? Right. Let's say Nat Phillips said yesterday he's fit and raring to go. That's what he said. There was a press conference. Acsom are meant to be up at the fan media one. We had a few other bits in the diary. We weren't able to make it, but I watched the press conference this morning. Nat Phillips is fit and raring to go, right? Now, there's a ruthlessness in the top managers who will look at this situation, I feel, right? And they won't allow the Scales game against Ibrox to even change their thinking. So if they brought in Phillips to be the first choice for the Champions League, Phillips will play on Saturday. To get embedded into that partnership with Lagerbielke, they won't even think about the fact that Scales was the man of the match against Rangers. By the way, I think O'Reilly might have been in with a shout, but anyway, Scales was the man of the match against Rangers. His confidence will be at its highest since he came to the club. And they might not even think about the fact that this is going to affect Scales a bit here if I drop him. Because it's a drop-in. You're dropping him for Nat Phillips. So I do take what Ewan Boy Martin is saying, but there's many managers won't have that ruthlessness. They'll play Scales because it's his jersey to lose. What type of manager do you think Rodgers is?
Well, I mean, we like to think that we know him well, given his previous stint, and obviously the little we've seen of him so far. He's, as we've all sort of said, he's been a bit cautious and cagey with his approach to the media, possibly to the players as well. He's maybe not been full Brendan when he's been behind the scenes at the training ground.
Gucci belts and all that stuff.
That is amazing, isn't it? When I'm slagging Gareth Southgate for his shoes, I hope I never see Brendan Rodgers with brown slip-on shoes.
What colour was his socks? Were they Union Jack socks?
No, they were just red socks. It just,
it's like the guy that runs Witherspoons. I think he would wear that kind of combo, wouldn't he?
I'll tell you another guy that would do that. Paul Baxendale Walker. There's a name for you.
I don't even know who he is, but with that name, I agree. Yeah, he would do it.
Well, he could be considered a hero in these parts because he's the guy that introduced EBTs to.
Oh, he's the porn king.
Yeah, that's definitely his attire. I'm sure of it. But no, I think Brendan Rodgers is. I mean, he has been a ruthless manager in the past. It's all about whether or not he would feel comfortable in the environment that he's in to do something like that, and how the rest of the players would react to it if they would think, oh well, if I play a good game, then I could lose my jersey. I could still lose my jersey. Do you know? I don't know. I'd be very. It's a very, very intriguing prospect. The team sheet coming out on Saturday. They always usually are, but this is one where you're really like, there's a few question marks. Does he rest anybody ahead of Tuesday? Does he bring in somebody different? Does he play a full strength team to start? Like, is it going to be a Hatate, McGregor, O'Reilly midfield against Dundee at home? No disrespect to them, but like, do you need that people will be like, no, they don't need rest. It's September. We should be playing our strongest side, in both games. It's an intriguing one.
It is, because that is another selection debate, I guess, is around the third midfielder. We'll be talking about the team from top to bottom. Does it make Brendan Rodgers ruthless, JP? Final question on the matter. Does it make Brendan Rodgers ruthless if he drops Scales?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah? I'd agree with that. I'd agree with that.
I do, because you're dealing with a guy who hasn't had opportunities at Celtic, and then he gets given an opportunity. He repays the manager's faith I mean, let's face it, he didn't really have a lot of choice in who he was going to play in central defence in that game. But I think, as you alluded to yesterday, guys like Bernabei maybe doesn't give him the faith that he can do a job. And Liam Scales has gone out there and done a job. Whether people, Celtic supporters or not, like it or not, Liam Scales performed in that game. And I'm glad that he was there to do so. I'm glad that he was integrated enough in the squad and in the side to be able to feel comfortable being there and not feel like an imposter, because there's every chance that there could have been a scenario where Liam Scales comes into that team and feels like he doesn't belong there. But because there was an environment there created that he did feel like he belonged there, he was able to play the way he did and have the confidence in his own ability to make last-ditch tackles which were necessary and defend sometimes with his back to the wall. And it was great to see. It was really great to see.
It was. And what's also great to see, JP, is the comments coming in, because they do often throw in other discussion points, as Michael the Boys has done. Right, Taylor for me drops out for Scales at left back. So he is saying, Michael the Boy is saying that you don't drop Scales, you just move him. You move him to left back. That's the area of the park that Alan Morrison last week said is our weakest, particularly when Hatate plays, because if Hatate's on the left-hand side, the defensive work, the chasing back, that kind of side of the game isn't his forte. And then behind him, you had Taylor and until recently Starfelt. And Alan Morrison reckoned that was the weak part of the team. So does Scales go to the left back? I mean, I think it's a fair point. I mean, if you're playing on-form players and you want to bring in Phillips because you bought him for the Champions League games due to the injuries, maybe that's another solution. Do you think that's a wee bit too radical?
I wouldn't say it's radical, but it's definitely... It would be hard to see him dropping Taylor from a side that won at Ibrox. I just don't think... I think you've got to look at the result and the fact that team won 1-0. It wasn't a case of, we fluked it or anything like that. It was a team performance that got that result. And whether Greg Taylor was a 9 or 10 out of 10, I don't think he was. Do I think he was a 5 out of 10? No. I mean, I'd be interested to see if people were going to rate Greg Taylor on that game. Like, realistically, what was he? Because you're not winning at Ibrox 1-0 if you're carrying players that are getting 5s out of 10. I just don't think that's possible. I think it's the same way as people criticising Turnbull and saying, "Oh, well, Turnbull didn't contribute anything." Again, I'd ask, was Turnbull a 5 out of 10 against Rangers? How can you be a 5 out of 10 in a team that wins 1-0 at Ibrox?
You're right.
In a game where we were told that there was no chance we were going to win.
I'd say that the worst you could possibly regard any of the performances would be a 6. And by the way, I know that this scale's difficult. It's a difficult balance, right? It's if you're rating anything, if you're rating a movie, what makes a movie a 7 over a 6? It's a difficult one. And I remember the computer mags back in the day done it as a percentage, didn't they? And they would say, right, your percentage is this based on your passing, your heading ability, losing duels, this, that, and the other. And they would actually have a formula for it. Whereas we're plucking it out of the sky. If somebody's had a bit of a bad game, you'd say maybe 5 and below. Your kind of mediocre game where they've not really done anything that you remember as being game-changing moments, but they haven't been skinned, they haven't let us down, you're probably 6, and then you start going up the scale. 7's a good game, 8 very good, 9 sensational, 10 the greatest of all time kind of thing. But I would say that none of them were that bad. None of them would have teetered below that kind of average, done their job, part of a unit. And Taylor and Turnbull would probably be at the lower end of that scale, JP, but I don't think they had bad games.
No, definitely not. And I would be very, very surprised if Scales played at the expense of Greg Taylor on Saturday. I just think that would be... Because then you're going to play that against Feyenoord.
I know.
You've got to keep some sort of consistency between the two sides, and you don't want to start tinkering with defence that, like it or not, they've kept 2 clean sheets in the last 2 games. St Johnstone at home, and then Rangers. So, I don't think that'll happen.
I also would say, in defence of Greg Taylor, is that he's been part of a team that won 5 domestic trophies out of 6 under Ange Postecoglou. I think the biggest change to Greg Taylor's performance has been the way that we've utilised our fullbacks. But then, on the back of that, I would say that against St Johnstone and Rangers, now it may have happened before that, but I noticed that mainly against St Johnstone and Rangers, we seem to go back to having the fullbacks inverting. They were spending a lot more time in that kind of midfield area, JP, so that we could overload the midfield. Because in the past, if we get beat against Rangers, it's normally because they've won the midfield battle. So we had those extra bodies in there. And I think that will result in an improvement in form of Greg Taylor. There's people in the comments who'll probably say he's no Celtic class or he's no European class, JP. Right, I know that there is a feeling that that's the case. But I just think that we've changed it against St Johnstone. We've brought the full-backs more into an inverted position. It's only 2 games in. Why change it again? Why change the personnel when it's not forced through injury? So I agree with you. I think Taylor starts. He starts on Saturday. He starts on Tuesday, barring injury, because I tell you what, it definitely is an injury crisis. Martin Devine, good afternoon, Acsom. Hail, hail. Need to give some game time to Phillips, and Scales has to make way. Simple. That's bold. Some might say ruthless, but we'll see once that team list comes out. Marquis, Palmer scored and got an assist credit during the week on international duty. He did. He's a player that I've not, obviously, like the rest of you, not seen a great deal of him other than in the the realms of showreels, etc. So I think based on that, I think Yang's done enough to get the jersey at the moment. And then obviously Palmer will be looking to come off the bench. Marquis, you forget about Tilio. He's back in training as well. I don't know when he's going to be ready. Yang looked great for South Korea. Right. As well as Yang performing well for South Korea, you've got a player who's almost forgotten about. He's going to be the Ideguchi of this season in Kwon. He was playing for the South Korean under-23 side. Apparently played pretty well. He's out the Champions League squad, JP. Now, I think that's pivotal because, and I asked the question in relation to the transfers this week, based on the fact that you're looking at Champions League squad, so you can look at the transfer window through a different prism, I guess. Are we strong enough for the Champions League? Sometimes results in the question, were we good enough in the recruitment this pre-season? And I think overall, I would say that there was areas that we weren't good enough in terms of bringing players in. I don't think we should be looking to make a profit in a transfer window. I think we need to go into the Champions League with the strongest possible squad. And I look at that squad and there's areas that I'm not too happy with. Kwon's left out. Now, going into this Dundee game, after doing well for South Korea under 23, having not made his competitive debut at home against Dundee, normally would be a brilliant opportunity to give this guy some game time. Right? It's not going to happen with the Champions League just coming up on Tuesday, though. So being left out of the squad is massive to the player's season, isn't it?
Oh, definitely, yeah. Definitely. And it was quite... I was quite upset to see that Nawrocki was left out as well, because it just shows you he's obviously really far away, which leaves us again short in the central defence position. You just don't want any injuries there now going forward, because it was bad enough last week going into that game at Ibrox with a 23-year-old that we've just signed from Sweden, and Liam Scales, who hasn't ever played in a game of that size and hasn't really played a lot for Celtic in recent times either. I mean, he's not really played a lot for Celtic, full stop. I think he's definitely been tarred with a bit of the Bodo Glimt away brush, where that team that night didn't play well as a whole, but Liam Scales seems to have been judged by quite a lot of people in that game. Mm-hmm. So you just don't want any further injuries, and when you get that Champions League squad out, it does make you go through the squad with a little bit more of scrutiny, because that's the people that you're hanging your hat on to do well for you at the top level. And as you said yesterday, you and Kev were talking about the recruitment last season wasn't good enough, really. And that's knocked on to this season. And that's when you see the effect of the recruitment last season into the Champions League squad this season, and it's like, well, had we been better at recruitment last season, then our squad, Champions League squad, would look a bit healthier in the present.
Totally.
And that is definitely something that got me thinking yesterday when I was thinking about that last season and who came in, and it's unfortunate because, as you said, you want your players to all be a Jota, be a Carter Vickers, be a Maeda, be guys that just come in and make themselves almost undroppable with their performances. We shouldn't be signing guys that are almost the complete antithesis of that, where there's guys that do everything in their powers that would seem to not nail down a jersey. Guys like Haksabanovic, Abelgard, there's a good few of them.
No, you're
Sorry?
right. Bernabeu, I would say, is in that category. JP, it was just through the discussion that came to light. It's almost like a staggered approach. So you're going into the Champions League, you look at that squad that we've got, you ask yourself the questions, where's the 3 or 4 big signings who have done well for us that we signed last season? They're not there. And when I asked Ev Graham that, he was saying, well, Alistair Johnson. And then you think, well, has done okay. And you're kind of thinking he will progress. So I'm not writing him off, absolutely not. But we're talking about positions we're unhappy with. And you think, well, left back, well, this pre-season's been a nightmare for centre-halves. Centre forward would be good to have a bit of back in there and goals. And then you think back to that recruitment last season, you think, well, we brought in a left back. The fact that he's not worked out, we're suffering now. We brought in a centre-half in Kobayashi. The fact that he never worked out meant that when we had a spate injuries, we ended up buying 3 centre-halves, And then the forwards, again, I just think we're an injury away from having an issue up top. We brought in Owen, and as I say, I'm not writing him off. The goalkeeper situation, we're running with Bain as our second choice goalie. We brought in a goalie, he wasn't up to scratch. So the recruitment last season, I think, went under the radar because we won the treble. It went under the radar because Ange Postecoglou and the recruitment team had done such an amazing job in season 1 that it almost bled into season 2. But when you then start looking at the individual players, you start thinking, well, were they a flop? Quite a few of them were, JP.
Mm-hmm. No, I know. And the curious case of Ben Siegrist, what is going on with him? Why is he, one, not included in the Champions League squad? There's not been any chat of an injury, or has there been? I don't know. Do you know anything about an injury for him? Or?
Not at this moment in time. Obviously, we know what happened last season. He was fit to play in January after his injury situation, but then there was personal issues. You go into that pre-season there, you're hearing that he wants to leave. It doesn't happen. He's the third choice goalkeeper. And I just don't think the second choice is up to scratch. We've seen what's happened to Abada. Totally unexpected. Muscle injury. It must be a muscle tear for it to take 4 or 5 months, but we'll find out more. If that happens to Joe Hart, JP, we're going into a European game, big European games. And if it happens during the campaign, we could be going into these games needing a point, needing a win. And then you're looking at the lineup and you're thinking, well, that's due to the fact that we've not done our recruitment. We've not done it, not just this pre-season. Last season, when we brought in a goalie, we didn't bring in the right goalie or a goalkeeper that was up to scratch. Now, Jerry Taylor, Acsom's very own afternoon team. Abada news is sad, but the silver lining is Jan, Tilio and Palma, 3 players I'm genuinely excited by. Paulo Bernardo as well, a no different position. Looking forward to seeing him roll on this weekend. Yeah, Celtic are back. Tony McCann. Double denim. I'm sorry Abada is injured, but the balance with Maeda and Abada as a bad fit, reckons Tony. Especially against deep-lying defences would probably be good. In Europe, though, yeah, we're basically just going to have to deal with the cards that we've been dealt when it goes into the injury situation. Now, the reason I'm bringing up this, Cathal Quinn, is because when I hear the word Salamanca, I think of one thing, and I think of Breaking Bad. That's what I think of, JP. I don't know about you. But when I see that word, that's exactly... And, of course, I think of 2 things, because I think of Better Call Saul. Stuart Ramsey, afternoon Acsom, and all my fellow Tims, hail, hail. Sad news about Abada. Gutted for the boy. Also, really sad news, JP, about Stuart Gray. I was reading about it yesterday. His fight against cancer, absolutely horrific. 49 years of age. he has shared on his socials a link to a GoFundMe page because there is treatment available that could help him. He has been given a diagnosis. He's been given, it's a very aggressive cancer, and it can, be 8 to 18 months life expectancy. He's a 49-year-old guy, fit as a fiddle, 5 kids, and he's been hit with that, JP. And it's just horrendous.
I remember him well from being a wee guy. That was a formative time for me, being a Celtic fan, and I've got a scrapbook with Stuart Gray cut out of the papers and Celtic views and everything else. So yeah, it's really, really sad to hear that. But he's is he Eddie Gray's
son? Yeah.
Who played for Leeds.
Mm-hmm. Frank Gray will be his uncle. The Gray brothers came from Castle Milk, I believe. Mm-hmm. Anyone in the comment section who knows best, let me know. But yeah, it's obviously one of the families, JP, where the football runs in the bloodline, because there's another Gray at Leeds United. I don't know if it's Stuart's son or nephew, but obviously there's generations of footballers. And Stuart Gray, I always remembered the 5-0 game where Cadetti scored. It was his debut, and he scored. That blew, and it blew the radio waves off air. And Stuart Gray was playing that night, but he'd grown his hair, and his hair went curly, and there was like 2 George Cadets on the pitch. Can you remember that? So yeah,
that was live on the telly as well. I don't know what.
Just terrestrial.
It was I think it was on terrestrial TV, but I remember Werner doing a backflip over the couch when Cadetti scored.
There was just the whole feeling about it. We were buzzing at that stage, and Tommy Burns had kind of tapped into this, almost like this grotto of superstars from, far-flung places. We hadn't really approached recruitment like that before. I know we had some overseas players. We had Rudy Vata. Prior to him, we had the Jakanowski and Dufcek. We had Johannes Edvaldsen. But there weren't many in terms of overseas players. All of a sudden, through this brilliant recruitment scouting kind of network that Tommy was building up, as influenced and inspired by Ajax. I mean, he would go over to Ajax and see how they did things, how they recruited, how they developed footballers. He started pulling players like Pierre Van Hooijdonk from NEC Breda, and Andreas Thom and George Cadet and Di Canio, and it went on. And that opened the floodgates, really, JP, for the way that we do recruitment now. We didn't have those markets prior to Tommy Burns being the manager at Celtic.
And imagine being like guys like Stuart Gray getting to play with these guys, like these guys coming in from Italy and Holland and things like that, and you're just a Scottish player that's played for Celtic through the youth teams, and then having never seen that kind of thing before, and then you're suddenly training with these guys, and the levels in training goes up, several notches, no doubt, from what it was at. I remember it as a fan well, so yeah, I definitely wish Stuart all the best in his battle with that. That's horrendous.
I know, it's terrible, and we've shared it on the socials if you want to get involved in donating to Stuart's fight. This morning I looked at it, he was a quarter of the way there already to raising 100 grand, because I mean, we've spoken about with Jamie with regards to the treatment of just about anything that you can't get in this country particularly, and the cost is absolutely astronomical for these types of things. So all the very best to Stuart and his family, because it was really sad, hard hitting, and obviously you'll have teammates as well, JP, who are not old, who will be looking at that situation thinking, boom, it's horrendous. It really is. I was talking, we've spoken about Dutch teams a few times today, but due to the fact that obviously we're playing Feyenoord, and we've mentioned Ajax a few times as well. But I read with interest, there was on Twitter, actually, there was a report. I first seen it it was shared, I think, by a Scottish journalist, but it was on the All About Ajax Twitter page. I'm still calling it Twitter, because I mean, what would I call it? X page? Everybody knows what I'm talking about. It's Twitter. ESPN have agreed on a new TV deal with the Eredivisie, a 5-year deal worth 135 million per year, plus a £70 million signing bonus. All KKD matches will also be broadcast live, as per Ajax's demands. Massive success for Ajax commercial director Gillen, who was very involved. And you look at that deal, and you compare it to Scottish football, and it's a conversation we have time and time again. Kevin Graham spoke about it yesterday, in actual fact, talking about the way that, you know, you've outgrown the game. And now that's not being elitist, it's not being big-headed or any of these things, JP. It's just that we don't get the broadcasting deals that the game deserves. The game is not marketed or promoted the way it should be. We try to develop footballers by getting a young team into the pyramid system, and they refuse to allow them to get promoted. Therefore, there's a knock-on, because people will say, oh, they've not won the league anyway. There's a knock-on because in terms of investment in that particular team, you're not going to invest any more than you do. There's no push to get people to go to the games, for example, JP, because they're just lying stagnant in Tier 5 of Scottish football. So it's yet another indication that Scottish football is standing still, whereas Celtic have hit the ceiling. They've hit the glass ceiling, haven't they?
Yeah, it does make you think that if they allowed... Just listening to you read out the numbers of that deal and everybody that's involved, and obviously that's not just been something that's come about overnight. It would be interesting if the governing bodies in Scotland allowed a panel of experts to come in and assess the whole situation from taking it from a neutral point of view. So there's nobody Scottish involved. It's just people at the top of their game are brought in and are given the Scottish football landscape, and then are asked, what would you do? What would you be your 15, 20-year plan to develop this? And here's the situation. You've got two teams who are the most supported teams in Scotland, therefore they get the biggest slice of the pie, and they've obviously got the biggest ability to attract players. What would you do to combat that and to try and bridge the gap? It's not going to happen overnight, but it'd be interesting to know if there was. There's always experts in fields, isn't there? There's people that know exactly what to do in a problem-solving scenario. So it would be interesting to know if somebody was presented with that problem, could they come up with a solution that the Scottish football authorities would have to accept as being, right, well, that's what we should do, and not say no to something, and not delay something, and not put red tape in the way of something, and just basically go with it and then see what happens. Because like you said yesterday, there is a brick wall that we've hit here in terms, and I know you said we've completed Scottish football. There are times when you speak to supporters of other teams. I did as well when we got knocked out of the League Cup off Kilmarnock. There was a few people who messaged me and said, oh, well, about time you gave somebody else a chance to win that cup. And then you look back and you're like, yeah, we've won it like 7 times or something in the last however many seasons. And that's just supposed to be the token cup for the other teams, so to speak. But yet we've been winning it every season because we've been winning trebles. Mm-hmm. So that's the reality. That's not sort of being big-headed or anything like that. As a sort of,
it is the reality. It's five trebles in 7 years, JP.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's that over a period of 7 years. It's not a flash in the pan. It's not a team that comes together and it's a one-off, which it had been previously. I mean, previous to that, Brendan Rodgers, normalising trebles. Previous to that, Martin O'Neill did it. Jockstein did it twice. That was it. You know, and it's now a situation where, like you say, every single facet of the football club gets to a point where it can't get any bigger. It can't get any more successful because of the constraints that you're operating within, which is Scottish football. I don't think it's been big-headed. There's plenty of people who would have the argument with us to say, no, we need to play in Scotland. That's our home. That we're a Scottish club with Irish roots. And I just think, well, if you want to be ambitious, if you want to push the envelope, if you actually want to market Celtic for what it is worldwide and really tap into that worldwide appeal of Celtic, then it can't be where we are. Studs Lanigan confirms, yes, Castlemilk talking about Eddie and Frank Gray, 2 fantastic footballers. I wonder if there was ever a moment where Celtic, that you look at the footballers back in the day and you think, was there an opportunity for Celtic to sign them? Jim McCalliog, for example, who spent his entire career, actually, maybe for a couple of years in America, down in England. He played with Chelsea, played with Man United. He scored against world champions England in that famous victory. There was a moment that Sean Fallon came to his door and almost signed him, but I think he went into Leeds. I wonder if there was a moment with the two Gray brothers at Castlemilk. Franny McKeown, Hector Salamanca. Yes, that's the guy. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did as well. I'm going to have to watch it back. AJSC Tech, looking back, it was a 50-50 with Angie's recruitment. It's interesting, isn't it? Because when you're winning trebles and all that, JP, you're thinking about recruitment, you think, wow, it was brilliant. Just about everything he touched, he's got the Midas touch. But actually now you're looking at it, you're thinking there was plenty of guys that didn't come in and be a success for Celtic.
Yeah, no, and it's there in glorious Technicolor when you're looking at the Champions League squad as to how little people have contributed and are still there. You know, we've managed to get quite a few of them out the door, but there's still people there that, you know, are on fairly decent wages. But I think you've got to give. I don't think you can be too harsh on Brendan Rodgers, given that he's only been here since June. I think he needs to be given, you know, a few transfer windows before you can really assess what he's going to do with this Celtic side over the next, well, if we're to believe him, 3 years.
Well, why wouldn't we believe him, JP?
No, I'm only saying that slightly facetiously because he was asked outright.
It was. It just occurred to me though, right? I wonder if football podcasts, let's say, this isn't really even a podcast, but anyway, this is a stream, but football shows from fans, alternative media from all over the world. I wonder if there are so many examples of police sirens going off in the background, JP, because every time you're on, it happens. Every time Colin Watt is on, there's a police siren kicking off in the background. Does it happen everywhere else in European football spectrum?
Some of the stuff I've had to put up with in this postcode for the last, well, certainly the last year or two. There's been police sirens quite close to home, put it that way, and nothing to do with me, I might add, but it's been a bit of an eventful building, shall we say. But yeah, fortunately, I think that might have stopped now. Hopefully, anyway. Touch wood.
They were just going for a lunch break. It's always at lunchtime. Right, here we go. B. Siegrist, real disappointment. Yeah, I mean, I'm going to go back to what I said about Siegrist. When we signed him, I had no complaints. I thought he was within the realms of Scottish football anyway. A goalie that could have come in and done us a job. It's no worked out. So yeah, with hindsight, absolutely, it's easy to say he was a bad signing. Brown Warrior AJ wasn't a big signing when he was signed. He was a player brought in to hopefully fill the void left by Juranovic. Yeah, and he has done, isn't he? And he's become a real favourite as well amongst many Celtic fans. Absolutely, yeah. Thoughts and prayers with Stuart Gray and his family at this time. Check out our socials where we've shared the link to his GoFundMe page. It was up there. It was right up there at 25 grand there or thereabout. So yeah, I'm pretty sure that you'll get a lot of support. Why is his jersey behind me? I'm going to go through some of the jerseys that is coming in. We are doing a Sell the Jerseys initiative. It's for wee Jamie Tierney. The link is underneath his video. And the generosity has blown me away. I'm going to have a different jersey up here, as inspired by JP Mason every day that I'm on the show. So thanks, everybody, for getting involved. And it's great to see the Celtic community coming together. I know sometimes it's kind of cliched and all that. It's a bit twee, all the Celtic family. But seriously, JP, when called upon, pull together and they make positive things happen. So thanks everybody for that. Thank you all for getting involved. 1,000 strong on a Thursday afternoon. And thank you again to JP Mason for joining me on A Celtic State of Mind.
Cheers, Paul.